Andras Baive. Once upon a time there lived in Lapland a man who was so very strong and swift of foot that nobody in his native town of Vadzo could come near him if they were running races in the summer evenings. The people of Vadzo were very proud of their champion, and thought that there was no one like him in the world, till by and by it came to their ears that there dwelt among the mountains of Lap Andras Baive by name, who was said by his friends to be even stronger and swifter than a bailiff. Of course, not a creature in Vadzo believed that, and declared that if the mountaineers happier to talk such nonsense, why let them? The winter was long and cold, and the thoughts of the villagers were much busier with wolves than of Andras Baive, who suddenly, on a frosty day, he made his appearance in the little town of Vadzo. The bailiff was delighted at this chance of proving his strength, and at once went out to seek Andras, and coax him into giving proof of his vigor. As he walked along, his eyes fell upon a big 8-oared boat that lay upon the shore, and his face shone with pleasure. "That is the very thing," laughed he. "I will make him jump over that boat." And Andras was quite ready to accept the challenge, and they soon settled the terms of the wager. He who could jump over the boat without so much as touching it with his heel has to be the winner, and would get a large sum of money as a prize. So, followed by many villagers, the two men walked down to the sea. An old fisherman was chosen to stand near the boat to watch for fair play, and to hold the stakes, and Andras, as a stranger, was told to jump first. Going back to the flag which had been struck in the sand to mark the starting place, he ran forward with his head thrown back and cleared the boat with a mighty bound. The lookers-on cheered him, for indeed he deserved it, but they waited anxiously all the same to see what the bailiff would do. On he came, taller than Andras by several inches, but heavier of build. He too sprang well and high, but came down his heel just grazed the edge of the boat. Dead silence reigned amongst the townfolks, but Andras only laughed and said carelessly, "Just a little too short, bailiff. Next time you must do better than that." The bailiff turned red with anger at his rival's scornful words and answered quickly, "Next time you will have something harder to do." And turning his back on his friends, he went skulkily home. Andras, putting the money he had earned in his pocket, went home also. The following spring, Andras happened to be driving his reindeer along a great fjord in the west of Vadslo, and a boy who met him hastened to tell the bailiff that his enemy was only a few miles off. And the bailiff, disguising himself as a Stalo, or ogre, called his son and his dog, and rode away across the fjord in the place where the boy had seen Andros. Now, the mountaineer was lazily walking along the sands, thinking of a new hut that he was building with the money that he had won the day of his lucky jump. He wandered on, his eyes fixed on the sands, so that he did not see the bailiff drive his boat behind a rock, while he changed himself into a heap of wreckage which floated on the waves. A stumble over the stone called Andras to himself, and looking up he beheld a mass of wreckage. "Dear me, I may have some use of that," he said, and hastened down to the sea, waiting till he could lay hold of some stray rope which might float towards him. Suddenly, he could not have told why, a nameless fear seized upon him, and he fled away from the shore as if for his life. As he ran, he heard the sound of a pipe, such as only ogres of the Stalo kind were wont to use, and there flashed into his mind what the bailiff had said when they had jumped the boat. "Next time you will have something harder to do." And it was no wreckage after all that he had seen, but the bailiff himself. It happened in that long summer nights up in the mountain, when the sun never slept, that it was very difficult to sleep, and Andras had spent many hours in the study of magic, and this stood him in good stead now. The instant he heard Stalo music, he wished himself to become as fleet of a reindeer, and in the guise of that he galloped like the wind for several miles. Then he stopped to take breath and find out what his enemy was doing. Nothing he could see, but to his ears the notes of the pipe floated over the plain, and ever, as he listened, it drew nearer. A cold shiver shook Andras, and this time he wished himself the feet of a reindeer calf. For when a reindeer calf has reached the age he begins to first lose his hair on his feet, he is so swift that neither beast nor bird can come near him. The reindeer calf is the swiftest of all things living. Yes, but not so swift as a Stalo, as Andras found out when he stopped to rest and heard the pipe playing. For a moment his heart sank, and he gave himself up for dead, till he remembered that, not far off, there were two little lakes joined together by a short trough of a very broad river. In the middle of the river lay a stone that was always covered with water, except in the dry seasons, and as the winter's rains had been heavier, he felt sure that not even the top of it could be seen. The next minute, if anyone had been looking that way, he would have beheld a small reindeer calf speeding northwards, and by giving a great spring, which landed him in the midst of the stream. But instead of sinking to the bottom, he paused a second to steady himself. Then he gave a second spring, which landed him on the further shore. He ran a little on the hill, and saw down, and began to neigh loudly, so that a Sato might know exactly where he was. "Ah, there you are!" cried the Sato, appearing on the opposite bank. "For a moment I really thought I had lost you." "No such luck," answered Andras, shaking his head sorrowfully, and this time he had taken his own shape again. "Well, but I don't see how I am to get you," said the Stalo, looking up and down. "Jump over as I did," said Andras. "It is quite easy." "But I could not jump this river. I don't know how you did," replied the Stalo. "I should be ashamed to say such things," exclaimed Andros. "Do you mean to tell me that to jump, which is the weakest that boy could do and take nothing of, is beyond your strength?" The Stalo grew very red and angry when he heard these words, just as Andros had meant him to do. He bounded into the air and fell straight into the river. Not that it would have mattered, for he was a good swimmer, but Andros drew out the bow and arrows that every lad carries, and took aim at him. His aim was good, for this time the Stalo jumped so high to the other side that the arrow passed between his fingers and thumb. Then Andros aimed a third arrow a little over the Stalo's head, when he sprang up just an instant too soon, and it hit him between his ribs. Mortally wounded as he was, the Stalo was not yet dead, and managed to swim to the shore, stretching himself on the sand, said slowly to Andros, "Will you promise me to give an honorable burial? When my body is laid in the grave, go to my boat across the ford, and take whatever you find in my house which belongs to me. My dog you must kill, but spare my son, Andros." Then he died, and Andros sailed his boat across to the fjord and found the dog and boy. The dog, a fierce, wicked-looking creature, he slew with one blow from his fist, for it was known that if a Stalos' dog licks the blood that flows from his dead master's wounds, the Stalo comes back to life again. That is why no real Stalo is ever seen without his dog. But the bailiff, being only half a Stalo, had forgotten him, when he went to the little lakes to search for Andros. Next, Andros put the gold and jewels on which he found on the boat into his pockets, and bidding the boy to get in, he pushed it off from shore, and leaving the little craft to drift as it would, while he himself ran home. And he soon married a rich wife whose parents would not have him as a son-in-law when he was poor. And the two lived happily ever after.